Welcome to our tutorial on changing out your intake. Now, obviously, we are using a engine that is on an engine test stand, and I'll explain the reasons for those a little bit later on in the video. But this process should work the same even if your engine is in the car. Now, there will be additional considerations if that's the case. You got fender wells, and of course you got the firewall that you're dealing with that. So you want to take extra precautions when dealing with those items, especially if you're really concerned with scratches, dents, dings, so on and so forth. Or your hand kind of gets away as you're prying up on something and it mars up your new freshly painted or freshly done firewall. Yes, this engine is on a stand, okay, and that makes it a little easier for us to work around, but these concepts and principles still apply. Now, it's important to also understand that we are dealing with a Chrysler motor here, specifically a Chrysler Edelbrock using 360 heads. Now, this process will work the same with any other Chrysler motor, an LA motor small block, okay, and even some of the Magnum motors. Now, this process will also work within the same conceptual level on Fords, Chevys, and other motors itself. You just want to consult with your particular make and model when doing an intake swap. All right, now when doing the swap, the first thing you want to do is you want to remove the accessories that are in the way. That includes wires, etc. for anything running around, okay? That also includes any ignition wires. Now you can do like we did. If you choose just to remove the cap and set it back, you can do that, or you can completely disconnect everything, just making a note on where those go, or consult with the firing order and distributor, so on and so forth. That you just label it, whatever is most convenient for you. Then, once your accessories are out of the way, you can go ahead and drain the fluids from the engine itself. Now, the fluid you want to drain, most importantly, unless you're doing an oil change, is the coolant. You want to make sure that that coolant gets below the heads itself. You don't want any fluids to seep out when you pull the head itself and get into the valley, and thus the oil, because you're going to expose the entire engine itself and the internals of the engine. All right. Once you have the fluids drained, either with the upper radiator hose or the lower radiator hose, your choice, go ahead and disconnect the hoses that go up to the intake itself. That would include, of course, any kind of hose going from the radiator, and of course going back to the heater core if you have a heater core installed on the motor vehicle. And you also want to check for any kind of vacuum lines if you're running a vacuum timing system, etc. Once those are removed, it is safe to go ahead and disconnect the carburetor from the fuel, unbolt the carburetor, and gently pull on the carburetor to pull that off the intake, being mindful of the studs, any kind of gasket material, so on and so forth. You have the spacer in there, it's a great time to pull that off. And once you get those set, the hose is off, the carburetor out of the way, go ahead and make a final check to make sure that everything you need has been removed off of the intake. So if you by chance have a coolant sensor on there or two, or oil pressure regulator or anything equivocal to that, now is a good time to remove it, or you can remove it after it's been off the engine itself, just making a point to go ahead and disconnect those wires. Once you get to this point, the fun can begin. On each side, there should be a total of 6 bolts attaching the intake to the head itself. So there's 6 on one side, 6 on the other, for a total of 12 bolts. All right, so you just want it doesn't matter which order you do these in, because you are removing it, not setting it in place. Of course, a good rule of thumb is just go ahead and work your way from one side to the other, alternating sides, getting them loose, and then use whatever tools you have necessary to make that happen. It wouldn't be bad to have a set of crow's feet available for this process, but if you don't have crow's feet, simple wrench, some ratcheting wrenches, and a ratchet and socket should work fine for this process. With the bolts removed, you can now begin the process of removing the intake. Now, this intake, or the intakes, are going to be pretty stubborn to get off, so don't think it's awful when it doesn't come off right away. All right, they will come off, but it will take a little gentle nudging. We recommend a pry bar to make this happen, being really careful not to mar up the block itself, okay? And sometimes you might need to use a nudger. By nudger, I mean a small hammer with some tapping, but you want to do what you can to get that intake off of there. Make it creative as possible, but make it neat as possible. Yes, you are going to leave gasket material, but you want to go ahead and just start working one side, then the other, front, back, side to side, prying on your front ends, your back ends, and of course the back of the deck, the rear of the deck, etc. But it should eventually work its way off. All right, once it's off, congratulations, it's almost break time. But you want to go ahead and take a moment to use any kind of rags or towels to cover that valley area. Because as you can see, when you pull the intake off, you have a lot of extra gasket material that will need to be removed. And you want to prevent anything from dropping down into that valley itself. Now, some people recommend going ahead and filling in those intake outlets itself, or those intake ports. You could use, like you see there, a mechanic's rag to do that, or a mechanic's towel. Of course, they don't have any lint in there. But some people say this point is kind of unnecessary because you can just blow it out. I recommend doing that. The person I was working with, well, he did it his own way, which is fine. But you want to go ahead and scrape off that material that is left over using a gasket scraper. And once that is done, you can go ahead and use your bristle disc to go ahead and remove any additional materials. And of course, you want to use that bristle disc with an appropriate 9-degree air grinder. And once you are all set and clean on all corners, that's around the heads, the intake area, and of course the deck on the block itself, you are ready to go to the next process. And at this point, we're going to take a time out. All right, so now that we had a chance to show you what's involved in taking off the intake, you might be wondering, why are we changing the intake to begin with? Well, there are two reasons. Reason number one, we noticed that while the engine was on the stand and we would rev it up a little bit, it felt a little restricted, all right? And we did a couple things to kind of make sure that it was tuned correctly, and it was still sounding slightly restricted at the higher RPM. Now, that wasn't under load, so you can imagine if you put it under load, that was restricted. Reason number two, the Performer intake is only rated up to a 650 CFM carburetor, and we felt like it was getting too much fuel as opposed to the proper airflow mixture, right? Air-fuel mixture. So we decided to go with the Performer RPM. All right, now the Performer RPM is rated up to an 800 CFM carburetor and will really bring that RPM target range within the design of the cam. So the cam is designed to be operated between 35 and 6500 RPM, and this intake will match that. So we're expecting better performance in the upper end, less restriction, and better air-fuel ratio. So we're going to show you what's involved with making sure this thing is done and installed correctly, and we'll see you at the end of the segment. On an interesting side note, if you look here at the Performer intake, everything's been ported and gasket matched on the intake side. And when you compare that with the same gasket on the RPM Performer, you'll notice here that there is just a small difference in the closeness to the gasket compared to the port matching. Now, do we think this is going to make a big difference on this particular engine configuration? Not so much. But if you wanted to, it would be a great time to go ahead and gasket match those materials. And you'll see some mild horsepower gains if you're to do that. But we don't believe, based on our setup, that the horsepower gains would be that much appreciable compared to the overall presentation. Now, if you look at the gaskets and the gasket material and how they fit onto the 360 heads on this particular motor, you'll see that they are matched up perfectly. So there'll be a little bit of buffering as the air is coming into the intake itself and the fuel, but it shouldn't be that much to really worry about. All right, so now that we're ready to install the intake itself, you want to go ahead and make sure that you make a final check to make sure that the gaskets are in place where they need to be at. If you by chance have stays on your gaskets, it's a good idea to leave them up there. One of the things that you just noticed is we went ahead and removed the valve cover so they don't get in the way here. And we are now going to use some gasket material to go ahead and start the gasket making process, which brings us to our next stop. All right, so one of the things that you're going to see is we're going to be running a bead or a line or a run with the Permatex Right Stuff here. Now, the reason we're doing that is because Edelbrock does not recommend using the cork gaskets. All right, there's a lot of problems with it, right? And so based off their recommendations, we're going to use this instead of this. Now, one of the things you're going to see there is look at the thickness here, okay? Look at the thickness there. We have to match this thickness with the can here. And this is some good stuff, all right? This is actually designed to replace gaskets and in some cases even outperform them. So we're going based off of Edelbrock's recommendations, and we're going to be using this, and check out what it looks like right here. All right, so as you can see here, we are now laying that liquid gasket on the front deck of the block itself. It is a nice, slow, steady beat to allow it to build up. And then, of course, you can see we're working around the various holes where dowels might go, etc. Now, as we come to the end here on the deck, we start going towards the head gasket, between the gasket between the intake and the head itself. And that, of course, allows to make sure that there is no leakage in that area. And, of course, we'll have a chance to zoom in really close here on this shot here. Again, notice how we're going nice and slow, allowing that material to build up. And we go up into the gasket itself because we don't want that to fall or stumble when we put on the head or the intake around the head. So check out what we're doing here, and while we're finishing up this segment of the video, now is a good time to remind you that don't forget to like and subscribe what you're seeing. And we got a lot more great stuff coming to you from Mike's Motorworks, and of course supplemented in Mike's Motorworks is Project Fastfish, which you haven't had a chance to start that out yet. You'll want to make sure you check it out, and check out other videos coming around the corner. All right, now we've gotten to the moment you've all been looking for, the installation of the intake. And if you've done everything properly at this point, everything should go in relatively easy. Now, it's not going to fall right into place because there's going to be some things that need to be tweaked as they go in and moved in and set as you start to move it in, but you'll see that how that works out here in the video itself. Now, I realize that the video here angle is not the best. I only have one camera, so I chose this angle because it seemed to be most informative with the actual installation of the intake. Now, when you look at the installation instructions from Edelbrock, all right, and you go down to the installation itself, it says right here on step 4, as we just mentioned, do not use cork or rubber end seals. Those are the end seals that go on the front and rear decks of the block itself. Use RTV silicone sealer instead, which is what we used. Then once you set it, you're going to torque all of the manifold bolts in 2 steps, all right? So don't do it all right up to the recommended foot-pounds, which is 25 foot-pounds. You're gonna do it in 2 steps, all right? And you can do that either by going to 15, then 25, or up to 20, then 25. All right, and that's in foot-pounds, not inch-pounds. Now, there is an important sequence here. If you look at the diagram that you see right here, you see that the first one you want to tighten down is number 1, which is on the inside rear half of the intake. So if you're looking at the front of the motor, which is where the radiator goes, and the back of the motor, which is where the firewall is, it's on the passenger side, and number 4 from the front, all right? So you're going to do that one first. Just get them hand tight first. Don't need to get them all the way down to that 20 or 15 foot-pounds. You want to get them hand tight, all right? So you're going to get all of them hand tight down, and then start working down. Now, you're going to find that some of them, especially the ones that we had trouble with, which was number 12, kind of didn't go in just right until they all started getting torqued down, which is fine and normal. If some of them are going in, they're all eventually going to work in, assuming that there's no gasket material in the way. But you want to follow this order and sequence provided by the instructions. And that'll just allow for the seats to seat in well and everything to fit in perfectly.
Thinking I'm content, my kids are in school, my wife ain't had to work in years. See, I've been blessed with the means to provide. People tend to take me seriously. I built this world with these two hands, following this vision for life. I'm on my way, my destination is on down the line. I'm not dismayed, I just see things in a different light. All I can say is I hope that better days are ahead. I hope that better days are ahead. I'm on my way, my destination is on down the line. I'm not dismayed, I just see things in a different light. All I can say is I hope that better days are ahead. I hope that better days are. I hope that better days are. I know that better days are ahead.
Now, once you get to this step, all right, and you've got everything battened down, you're torqued down, you are ready to reassemble, putting everything back. All right, so you're just reworking the steps that you worked before, putting on the valve covers, going ahead and reattaching any kind of distributor, putting that close to the mark that you left on there, making sure that the carburetor is placed on there, fuel is connected, and of course, any kind of hoses that you disconnected, lines, electrical, so on and so forth. Then, once you have everything battened up, it is time to go ahead and replenish your fluid with your coolant, and of course, make sure that everything is set and tight, and you're ready to go ahead then and fire up for your first test to make sure there are no leaks. And now, because everything is pulled off, don't expect it to run smoothly, all right? Because there might be some timing things that you need to do, so on and so forth. In fact, that's what the next segment is going to cover. All right, again, here we have a quick view of the two intakes. You can clearly see here, though, there is a big difference in the amount of airflow potential there is between the Performer and the Performer RPM. And of course, we have our final product of the intake mounted on the engine itself. All right, at this point, we've already fired up the motor for the first time. It has been started, and you can kind of see here that we are trying to dial in the timing at idle. You can see the indicator there, the timing indicator, is hovering right at the 0 mark. Now, the engine has not had time to warm up just yet, but as soon as it gets a little bit warmer, we'll be able to adjust the vacuum settings and the fuel settings and the fuel flow on the carburetor itself. And we'll read the vacuum gauge and kind of see where things are sitting.
Idle's lower, better. Take it up to about 800. Wow, it's already sounding much different. Would you agree? It's having no problem lowering download and idle.
Now, as we're listening to that engine, and we're listening to this in real time, we're not going to change the speed at which this is playing back. We're going to play this in real time. You're probably keying in on that little popping noise as we are on the passenger side of the right side bank of the motor. And the cause of that is because the exhaust header, or the exhaust manifold, is a little undersized for the ports. All right, so there's a little bit of back pressure there, and it's creating that little popping noise. It is not a valve or a rocker that is popping. It is the exhaust.
Considerably better. Holy crikey, just changing the engine made it that much better. Oh, I'm so happy. When we get those other ones dialed in, it's going to sound freaking amazing. Aha, did something smart. Aha, did something smart.
At this point, now that the engine has warmed up a little bit, what we are doing is we are going through and adjusting all four idlers and making sure that the idle is creating the proper amount of vacuum, and to make sure that we're not running lean or rich. And you'll see that we have the vacuum indicator there, and then as we are adjusting each side, the RPMs will progressively increase. All right, and then we'll be able to go back to the idler control and turn that idle down. And you'll see on the gauge there that that needle will move as it's sitting in idle. And of course, when we rev it up, it goes into that good indicator, so it's getting the right airflow mixture. So sure enough, by changing out the intake, it solved the problem with running severely rich and not getting enough air. In other words, getting that proper air fuel mixture that we discussed, or that was brought up earlier on in the video. So we're going to let this play out, and then we're going to do a final walk around to let you hear the motor for the last time. And this will be the last time that the motor is fired up until such time as we actually drop it in the Barracuda. So I'm going to let these play out and let you appreciate the sounds of this stroked out 318, which is now a almost 392.
Yeah. Watch it while it comes in. Huh? I'm gonna rev it. Watch it when it comes in. I don't need to look at it. All right, keep going. Huh? Temperature? 171. None of That's what it should have sounded like the whole time. That's what it should have sounded like the whole time. There's a lot more air getting through.